Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on this Friday at 1 p.m. for Live Impact News. My name is Eugene Daniel. I am in our 13 News Now streaming studio in Hampton Roads, Virginia. Right now, with me in the studio, we have producer Sarah Calloway and meteorologist Hunter Forst, who we're going to hear from in just a few moments, as we do have a weather impact alert coming up in a few days. But I want to go ahead and update you on a few situations that we have been monitoring right now. We do have an active bomb threat that is on the campus of the University of Virginia. This bomb threat is currently being connected to two libraries there on campus. We do know that authorities are there urging students to evacuate and stay away from the area as they address that situation. Of course, we're going to have more on that, but those libraries, the Shannon and Clemens libraries, I'm looking at a report now, they have been evacuated. They're still asking for people to avoid that area. We're also following up on the situation at ODU, Old Dominion University. We're learning more about the gunman and the victims who were involved in that deadly attack, the suspect's documented ties to terrorists, and we're going to hear from an experienced FBI agent about what could happen next in this investigation as they are looking at it as a possible act of terrorism. And we have an update to the war in Iran today as 6 more U.S. service members were killed in a plane crash, this in the Middle East. And right now, let's take a live look from Utah, where we have the alleged killer of conservative activist Charlie Kirk is back in court right now. We're talking about Tyler Robinson, his attorneys speaking and presenting in court. We're going to try to take you into the courtroom in just a bit as that is underway. But to start, again, we do have a weather impact alert that's coming in just a few days here, I believe for Monday. We're going to bring in meteorologist Hunter Forst. Obviously, I know this is Friday, but we want to get ahead of it for people as we go through the weekend. What is this particular weather impact alert for in the coming days?
So, believe it or not, it's not for snow, even though I know that's kind of what has been the case over the last couple of months. But it's actually for some severe weather. We have the potential for severe weather heading into our Monday afternoon and Monday evening ahead of a pretty strong cold front that's going to be rolling on through. The good news is the next couple of days aren't looking bad. Today, we're going to be in the upper 50s to right around 60 degrees. It's going to be a pretty typical March afternoon. A little bit breezy as well, but if you have any Friday night plans, not looking too bad, staying dry, dropping into the lower 50s. And for this weekend, it's looking really nice. Both Saturday and Sunday will be right around 64 degrees for a high on Saturday. Mostly sunny, a very pleasant day. And the nice weather sticks around heading into Sunday as well. I think we could see maybe a few very late showers on Sunday. But overall, if you have any plans during the day, not bad. Temperatures in the mid to upper 60s. But as we have really nice weather here this weekend, we are going to be seeing a pretty strong low pressure system forming across the Midwest, and then a cold front stretching, through Illinois, down into Missouri, Arkansas, into parts of Texas as well. And we're going to see some severe weather forming in that area and a lot of snow for parts of Michigan and into Wisconsin. They could see feet of snow, but also to the south of that, some severe weather down across parts of the plains. They're also under a level 3 risk out of 5 for some severe storms. So through the day on Sunday and into Monday, we're going to see this cold front getting closer and closer to us. So that's what's going to provide that lift and instability for us here across Monday afternoon and into the evening. Temperatures will be in the lower 70s. We'll see some scattered showers and storms through the early part of the afternoon, and then the cold front rolls on in later in the day. Once that cold front passes, late Monday into early Tuesday morning, that severe weather threat diminishes, and behind the cold front is some much cooler weather, unfortunately for the warm weather lovers. Here's a look at what the Storm Prediction Center is saying. Right now, they're giving us a level 3 out of 5 threat for severe weather. And a level 3, isn't super common for us. So this is something we're going to have to pay attention to as we head into the day on Monday, of course. And, of course, the next couple of days through the weekend. It has happened before, a level 3 out of 5, but it doesn't happen, again, very often. So that potential for severe weather, of course, is there. That's why we do have the weather impact alert Monday afternoon into the evening for the potential for these storms to provide some gusty winds, strong damaging winds possible, and even a few isolated tornadoes not out of the question. So through the weekend, you're going to want to check for updates on this forecast. And of course, especially on Monday, you're going to want to make sure you have a way to get alerts to your phone in case a warning is issued for your area. And once the cold front passes, temperatures really take a tumble. We'll be in the mid to upper 40s to low 50s on Tuesday and Wednesday. So it's going to be cold once this passes on by. Cool weather eventually goes away, and we'll be back into the upper 50s to mid to low 60s by the end of the week and into next weekend. But the good news is outside right now, this afternoon, it is beautiful out. We're taking a live look at the Virginia Beach ocean front, and it's looking beautiful out there. It's cool, but beautiful. A few people going for a nice walk along the beach. The water looks very refreshing. It's a beautiful color right now. And we're in the low 50s, upper 40s, 51 in Norfolk. It's 50 in Virginia Beach, 52 in Hampton, 49 in Newport News, 51 in Suffolk, 49 in Elizabeth City, and it's 50 over in Chesapeake. And about 24 hours ago, you can tell where the cold front has yet to pass, and that would be Elizabeth City, because 24 hours ago, we were 25 degrees warmer than this time right now. So certainly we had big changes yesterday. One of the biggest 24-hour temperature drops here in the Hampton Roads area. But right now we have an area of high pressure over us. So we have nice sinking air. Helps get rid of all the clouds. So it is going to be a really nice day. It's going to continue to stay nice and dry through the rest of this afternoon and pretty much through the entire weekend. Again, later today, we'll get into the upper 50s, close to 60 degrees. If you have any plans tonight, 10 o'clock, still pretty comfortable in the mid to lower 50s. It'll be a nice start to our Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. We're right around 50 degrees. And then we get into the mid to low 60s by Saturday afternoon, a mix of sun and clouds. And Saturday night, still looking good, nice clear skies. We're in the mid to upper 40s. But again, for today, we'll be in the upper 50s to right around 60 degrees, mostly sunny. Pretty typical for this time of year. And it'll be a bit breezy as well. Gusts, around 20 to 25 miles an hour as we go through this afternoon. Overnight tonight, upper 40s. So warmer than last night. We were in the mid to upper 30s. But tonight we'll be in the mid to upper 40s. 46 in Norfolk tonight, 48 in Virginia Beach, 46 in Chesapeake, 44 degrees in Boykins, and we'll be around 47 in Cape Charles today, 48 in Matthews, 48 in Gloucester, 49 in Pocosin, 47 over in Newport News, 49 in Edenton overnight tonight, 48 in Hertford, 49 in Knott's Island, 49 degrees in Manio. And again for tomorrow, a great start to the weekend, a good amount of sunshine. We're going to be in the mid to lower 60s, a mix of sun and clouds, and it's going to be a pretty nice start to the morning as well. It's not going to be as chilly as what it was this morning. We'll be in the upper 40s to low 50s. So you get outside early tomorrow, we'll be seeing nice clear skies, a nice start to the day, go for a walk, get a nice coffee. Always nice to do when the weather is cooperating and it's not super cold, so you don't have to wear 100 layers. Here is our 7-day forecast. Again, today's looking good. Same through the weekend. Mid to upper 60s Saturday and Sunday. And then on Monday, we do have that weather impact alert for the potential to see some severe weather heading into the second half of the day. Some strong gusty winds possible. A few isolated tornado warnings not out of the question. So you're going to want a way to get alerts to your phone as we head into our Monday. Tuesday, St. Patrick's Day, chilly, 50 degrees only for a high, but it'll be dry. And then Wednesday gets even colder, mid-40s. Boo, tomato. 45 degrees for a high. And then we'll warm it back up heading into the end of the week and into next weekend, back into the mid to upper 50s to low 60s.
All right, so, there are some good days in there, which is great. We just got to get through Monday from what I'm seeing at this point, and then we can, get to closer to what we expect. Do one thing for me, though, when it comes to Monday, at least one more time. Can you time out the potential for the threat? What portion of the day are we expecting this to take place?
So the good news is, waking up Monday morning, things are looking to be fine. It's really not until, mid to late afternoon and into the evening is when we'll see some strong to severe storms. And then heading into Monday night, the cold front passes on through and that severe weather threat diminishes. So really the second half of Monday, as we get into the afternoon and evening, that's when you really want to start to pay attention to the forecast. Make sure you have a way to get alerts to your phone in case a warning is issued for your area.
Really good advice there. We saw that kind of play out, I believe, maybe not here, but after we watched those tornadoes break out in, portions of the country over the last several days. I know people up there. I talked to them before and after, and I can tell you they were very tuned in to their local meteorologists through their phones. They have all of the weather radios because, they live in the Midwest, so they know that is something that they need. It can and will save lives. So to Hunter's point there, please download our apps. Make sure you have those resources on your phone, weather radios, all the things you can have access to, because you just never know when you might be in the position where that will come in handy, and it could be a matter of it literally. I'm not even trying to sound scary here, just for the future. It could be a matter of life and death for many people. So please make sure that you have that information on hand.
Absolutely.
All right.
Call, Eugene.
Well, Hunter, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you for coming in. It does look nice out there, at least.
It's beautiful.
Right now on the beach.
Great.
I can't wait to get out there, but we got a little bit of time before that happens. We have a lot to talk about here on Live Impact News. When we come back, we'll have the latest information that we are learning about the victims of that deadly shooting on Old Dominion University's campus and where the investigation could go from here. We're going to hear from an FBI special agent with his thoughts on what could happen next in the probe. Welcome back here to Live Impact News on 13 News Now Plus. Again, I want to bring our attention, let you know we are monitoring an active bomb threat on the campus of University of Virginia, the grounds of UVA there. That is dealing with 2 libraries. We're waiting to get the official all clear there. We know that students have been evacuated from those libraries, and they're asking for people to avoid that area. As soon as we get an update on that, we will let you know. But we do need to talk about the threat and the alert that we got yesterday. We were on this stream live and on the air as we all learned and watched that deadly shooting unfold on the campus of Old Dominion University. A gunman walked into a classroom there on campus and opened fire, killing 1 RLTC instructor and injuring 2 others. We know that all 3 of those who were victims were connected to the RLTC program, and the students inside of that room were able to subdue and kill the gunman in that attack. We have not been told as of now from the FBI or federal authorities how they were able to do that, but we're told that it was the brave work of the students inside of that classroom who were able to take out the man who they say opened fire inside of that School of Business building there on campus. In terms of the conditions of the 2 surviving victims, we know that one of them is now improving in their status, going from critical to fair at Centera Norfolk General Hospital, and then another person drove themselves to a hospital in Virginia Beach. We do believe that they have been released. We're going to have much more on that shooter that is now at the center of an investigation by federal authorities in which they're looking at this as a possible act of terrorism. He's been identified as 36-year-old Mohammed Baylor Jallo. He got out of federal prison back in 2024, just 2 years ago, after admitting to attempting to work with ISIS. Again, we're going to have much more about him and the investigation and the questions that still need to be answered moving forward. But we just got new information about the 1 victim in this case who we know of at this moment has passed, and that is Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw. The Old Dominion University officials just releasing a long statement in support of Shaw and his family, speaking of him and saying that not only is this an absolute tragedy, but they are making sure people remember who he is. I'm going to go ahead and read a bit about him here. Again, we're just getting this release within the last few minutes. This is from the Old Dominion University officials released just within the last 15 minutes, saying of Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw that he graduated from ODU in the class of 2007, calling him a dedicated monarch, public servant, and a true hero, saying he embodied what it means to be a devoted family man, a leader, and a heroic protector, even in his final moments. He was a shining example for his students and all monarchs. It says Lieutenant Colonel Shaw was a beloved and respected leader at ODU. He personally guided students in the Army RLTC Monarch Battalion through his caring spirit and combat experience. After enlisting in the Army in 2003, they say Lieutenant Colonel Shaw enrolled at ODU in 2005. He received his Army commission and graduated in 2007 with a bachelor's degree in sociology. He fulfilled his dream to be an Army pilot, flying an A664 Apache over Iraq, Afghanistan, and Eastern Europe during Operations Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, and Atlantic Resolve. Shaw logged more than 1,200 hours, 600 of them on combat missions in 3 aircraft. In his last position before joining ODU, he served as Director of Operations for the 3rd Combat Aviation Brigade in Savannah, Georgia, where he oversaw day-to-day operations, training, modernization, and long-range plans. In 2022, Shaw returned to ODU to lead the Army RLTC Monarch Battalion, where he oversaw a nearly 50% increase in enrollment during his first year. As professor of military science and department chair, he took immense pride in his students, particularly seeing the transformation they made when they turned from being a student into being a soldier leader. That portion was in quotes. In 2023, they say that Shaw was named to the Old Dominion University Alumni Association's 40 Under 40 class. and his presence and impact were felt on campus, from bringing back the university's rappelling exercise at Ballard Stadium a few years ago to imparting valuable life lessons at commissioning ceremonies for new military officers. They extend their heartfelt condolences to his family, saying that it is a devastating loss to the ODU community that they are currently experiencing. That was a letter that was written and penned by Dr. Brian Hempfield, the president of Old Dominion University. So that is information that we're learning, as you can now get a sense of the type of man in this situation in which this community that we are losing in Lieutenant Brandon Shaw. Yes, Sarah.
We have some breaking news.
What's happening?
If you check the thread, it is in there.
Okay. Pausing this just briefly, I told you about the threat that we have been monitoring at UVA. It does now appear that George Mason University is also reporting a threat there on campus at this time. Just looking into that at the moment, it's potentially a threat there. An investigation is currently being conducted out of an abundance of caution and in the interest of public safety. They are asking people there to follow the direction of law enforcement and emergency personnel. This is coming from GMU that is putting this out there at the moment. Again, this is from George Mason University, saying that the Fenwick Library at George Mason on its Fairfax campus is closed until further notice to allow university police to investigate a potential bomb threat. That would make the second circumstance that we have seen just within the last few hours at this moment of universities currently experiencing some form of reported bomb threat directly connected to libraries on campus. First was University of Virginia, with 2 libraries there being evacuated and checked. We're still waiting for the latest update there. And now it is George Mason University. However, they are clarifying and saying that this threat has not been confirmed, though they are investigating it at the moment, and they are exercising an abundance of caution. So thank you, Sarah, for flagging that for me at the moment so we can get that to our viewers. But what if we just take a breath here for a moment? What a difficult 24 to 48 hours it is turning out to be for our local universities right now. You looking at the situation that we were just talking about at ODU, that now is going to have implications that go into the waters of whether or not this was an act of terror, as we know that the shooter there, Mohammed Baylor Jallo, has already a criminal background tied to ISIS. Now, federal investigators, the FBI, looking into that situation. Meanwhile, ODU canceling classes yesterday and today as they go into spring break next week, and the university figuring out how they're going to emotionally, mentally move forward after experiencing this crisis as a community. But we can go back before that, and knowing that even on Norfolk State University's campus, as they are preparing to come back from spring break, they too lost one of their students while that student was home in Maryland for spring break, shot during a pickup basketball game just earlier this week on Monday. And now we're looking at 2 universities, UVA and George Mason, that are having to deal with bomb threats on the campus, students needing to be evacuated from places in which they go for a safe space to study. It is certainly turning out to be a very challenging 24 to 48 hours, even spanning back to earlier this week with Norfolk State University for a lot of our students here in Hampton Roads and in the Commonwealth. I want to get back to the situation that we are now following, though, with ODU. We're going to get to later on within this stream a conversation where we heard from the former special agent in charge with the FBI in the Norfolk field office about where this investigation could potentially go forward. We're going to hear from Brian Dugan in a conversation with him in a bit. We also were able to sit down with ABC News chief justice correspondent Pierre Thomas earlier today about his experience in covering cases like this and some of the previous reporting he has done and how it fits into some of the concerns that he had been reporting and hearing from federal officials about attacks here in the homeland. But right now, what I would like to do, we have Madison Schlegel, who is in the studio with us, and we were all here. Madison, you were out in the field. We were here in the studio, all trying to make sense of what was going on, figuring it out. We now have a better understanding that we have heard from FBI, from Norfolk Police. We've heard from ODU Police about the timeline of what transpired here, the moments in which Mohammed Jallow walked into that classroom. I'm bringing in Madison so we can take down this timeline, catch us up to speed on where we started. I know that's what you're reporting on today.
Yeah. Again, you said it there. It's been a tough couple hours and last day for all of the students that are here in the area. But again, we were one of the first crews on scene, if not the first reporter that was up live and helping to bring the people the true gravity of the situation of what it was. And we were on scene by 11 a.m. And right now we're finding out through dispatch audio that was sent to us through Norfolk Police Department that first original call, those calls started coming in at around 10:43 in the morning, where they were getting calls of students running out of a building on ODU's campus and that there was potentially an active shooter. Now, if you're listening to that dispatch audio, we got sent probably about 30 minutes of it, and it's basically at the tail end of you can hear them calling more units to ODU, and then after they get those initial calls in at 10:43, just 2 minutes later at 10:45, they're getting a call that says that there are at least a couple people in the room that have been shot, and it looks like the shooter has been deceased. Now, we know from the statement from ODU's police chief yesterday in the press conference, they said that those crews were on scene by 10:47. So already we've got a very short time span here from 10:43 when we first got that call in to 10:47 crews responding, and then just 3 minutes later at 10:50 we get reports that the threat has been, quote, neutralized. Obviously, we didn't get that news. That news wasn't released to us until around 11:30 yesterday, but it was at 10:50 when officers were able to get inside of that room and kind of officially declare what had happened. Now, at that point, at that 10:50 mark, between that 4:53 phone call to dispatch and that 10:50 mark, there were reports that the shooter was already dead. So they were getting those calls from inside the classroom and those reports. But I think here, we've said it time and time again, but this quick response time, the police chief at ODU really credited to the fact that they've been running these drills, that they know what to do in these circumstances. And I think you could really hear that from listening to the dispatch audio that we received, basically the dispatcher calling for each units, and how they respond to a situation like this is really more formulaic than I think we really know. And as we're out on the street trying to show the people what's happening, there are other checks and balances that are being done behind the scenes. So those were the quick initial calls of when it came in and when we kind of figured out what was happening inside of that room. But police had Hampton Boulevard closed by 11 a.m. I mean, by the time we were there, by the time we got on scene at 11 a.m., Hampton Boulevard had already been shut down by police, and luckily they were able to let us through to get a little closer to that scene there. But Hampton Boulevard stayed closed for most of that day and didn't reopen until about 2 p.m. So that's when we saw those officers starting to leave the area. But there really was a heavy police presence until around 2 o'clock yesterday. But I think, going back to your initial question, Eugene, just the quick time span that we saw here from 10:43, Norfolk Police getting this first phone call, to 10:50, not only is the suspect dead, but we've got police inside and responding or hands-on with students escorting them out of the building. I think to say within a span of 10 minutes, all of this happening, I mean, it gives you goosebumps to hear about how the faculty, the students, and all the officers really had to work together swiftly and quickly in order to make sure that everybody was okay.
And we did see, as we're looking at the video now, from what you saw on the scene, what our cameras were capturing about that response there, we knew, again, that it was federal, it was state, it was local, it was university, all law enforcement there, acting very quickly. And, it's interesting. We continued to hear, rightfully so, from our understanding, people praise, as you said, law enforcement's response to all of this, how quickly they were going through the process as you just detailed out. In this circumstance, however, it was the students who were able to subdue and kill the gunman even before really the officers, from what we understand now, were able to get to it. And, that's going to be another thing, I'm sure, as everyone's going to be wanting to know what happened inside that room, and the brave account that these students, their actions that they made to act so swiftly in that and be able to do that and to do it without a gun. We know that at this point, that they did not shoot him to death. And so that's going to be pretty interesting to hear that for the first time. Madison, I'll ask you this too. You talked to a lot of students yesterday. And I thought some of the conversations that you had were of, even in the midst of tragedy, the more refreshing ones from some of the perspectives that some of these students had. As they were talking about the anxieties and the fear, there was one young man in particular who truly had the mindset of, I want to make sure others are okay, and was thinking about them too. What were your takeaways from the students that you talked to yesterday, and their mentality and emotions just moments after this?
I think what we're learning is that this generation of students has made this issue personal for them. And I think we saw that in the students who took the time out of their day to speak with us. We have a very delicate job to go to a scene where we know that parents are concerned and worried. They just want to know if their kid is okay, let alone plastering their face on the news. But we speak to students in a very, very vulnerable state. And in many of these instances, we had students come up to us to say, hey, we saw what happened. Hey, I was inside the building. Hey, this, X, Y, and Z. And I think their fervor to want to talk about it, to share their experience, to share their point of view in saying that this is real. Everyone at this point has a story of someone that they're connected to that has a story. And for so many of these students, this became their story. And for them to have the empathetic and positive rhetoric that they did in the hours of tragedy was harrowing. Again, it's hard not to get emotional about it because we're trying to get the facts and the information to make sure that we can tell everybody what's happening in a seamless situation. But as I always say, at the end of the day, we're people. And this impacts everybody in that stratosphere. I know we saw even people who were conducting traffic yesterday, officers in vests hugging each other. It wasn't just the students that were embracing each other. It was also the officers who were dealing with that time and that stress. As we were interviewing one of those students, he had spoken about how the first person he thought of in the building was his girlfriend. He knew his girlfriend was also in the building. He was in the building when this happened. He encountered the moments that he heard a tussle, a fight. He didn't necessarily hear gunshots, but he heard a mass group of people fighting. Now, unfortunately, we know what that was. That was those ROTC students jumping into action there. But he said his first thought of concern was for his girlfriend. He found his girlfriend, and then they were trying to get to safety, and it was an ODU staff member that stopped them in the hallway and pulled them into an office. That ODU staff member stopping and pulling multiple other students into the office. They were in an office of 4 to 6 other students. And to know that his first thought was, I hope my girlfriend's okay, and then post that, wanted to turn around and say, my biggest thoughts right now go to the people who were in that room, who had to face that threat, because I I saw that meaning I saw the aftermath of it, which was the tail end of the situation. And he said, had I been in the wrong moment there, wrong place, wrong time, that could have been me. Had that ODU staff member not stopped these children in the hallway, or students in the hallway, pardon me, what could have happened? And I think we've talked about it as well as the devastation that could have happened here, but given the impact and the knowledge of the students that were inside this room, it turned out to be a much different scenario. And I know that tonight so many different communities are mourning losses, more than one. And I think on top of seeing these students support themselves, as we were interviewing this young man and his girlfriend was standing out of camera, clearly too shaken to speak with us. And we're not going to push anyone who isn't comfortable to talk with us. But out of the corner of my eye, while I'm talking with you live, Eugene, while I'm interviewing this young man, Kelvin, next to me, I see that his girlfriend is moved to tears hearing his words, and another student who was walking by stopped and said, hey, I saw this interaction. The student stopped, said, hey, are you okay? You could tell that these students didn't know each other, but this young girl opened her arms for this other student. And to see that type of encounter happening peripherally when we're just trying to get the story of what happened inside the room, I think in those moments we start to forget the webbing effect of how many people this touches. And in those moments, strangers were turned community members yesterday, and we saw that firsthand.
Yeah, I think that was so well said. I think it's the double edge of this becoming so consistent across our country. On one end, you have students that know what to do. And I'm not just talking about the ROTC students who absolutely acted in an almost unimaginable way of bravery and ending the threat there. That is a specific level of training that they had to have. But for the other students who may not have that training, but they do know those words, run, hide, fight, it's something that's in your mind now if you're in this generation, our generation and younger, because you've seen it so happen. That's on one side of the coin. On the other side of it is it's still not really real until it hits home for you and when you experience it hand to hand. And you can see that playing out, I think, for members of our community and certainly the young people you were speaking with.
Yeah, I want to bring back another interview that we did. This young man, John, he was inside Constant Hall when the shooting happened. He described to us that he just felt worry and he felt the rumble of people exiting the building. He said it sounded like a stampede, screaming, footsteps, loud. And I think what he said is, he said, I was just worried about the other people in the building. I wasn't worried about me because I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
These kids have such, I should stop saying kids, truly young adults, people who are at the university. These young adults have such a receptive mind to understanding the reality around them and knowing what's happening in this world. And I think what we saw yesterday is that they want their stories heard and they want their stories told. And because of that, they want justice at the end of the day. They don't want to see any other school go through this. And I know you and Sarah have been tracking it all day, but those other threats that we've heard today at other schools, unfortunately, it's sad to hear, but it comes not even 24 hours after what the FBI is calling a terror attack on ODU. And so it's unfortunate that we might see some of these other instances pop up and sprinkle around. And again, I think these students really do have something to say about it, and to hear their empathy and to hear their want for change is very impactful at a time that can be heavy and dark.
Well, Sarah has pulled up one of your interviews. I do believe it's with the young man that you were just talking about. So let's listen to him share with Madison yesterday his experience, the moment that he realized something was going wrong inside of the building.
John, do you mind telling me a little bit about what was happening in class when you guys heard that alert?
Yeah, well, it was just normal class, and then suddenly there was kind of a thud, and then a tons of running down the hallway and screaming. And then the fire alarm went off, and then it was just a bunch of movement, and it kind of felt like a fire drill. And And then we got outside and someone yelled that it was an active shooter or something like that, and we all kind of like ran out of there.
So you said that people were running. What was going through your head when not excitement, but the kind of danger that flashed through everybody's head kind of started to set in?
Yeah, honestly, I was just hoping that the people that were involved were all right and that it would all settle out. I mean, I wasn't worried about myself. Like, I know where I'm going if I'm leaving, so it's no biggie. But just hoping that everyone else is okay.
Right, and so this is just a typical Thursday for you guys here, but unfortunately this kind of massive event has now happened. Hopefully we're going to learn more information from police about what exactly has happened. But seeing this kind of action on campus, is this something that you've never seen before?
Yeah, not something I've ever seen, not something I've ever witnessed at all, definitely.
And seeing this amount of police here right now, are you a little maybe struck by the amount of officers and police officers we keep rolling up?
Yeah, definitely. I was very surprised that but it's good because they're here to protect us and take care of us. And so that's a good sign that we've got this many people watching our back.
And they certainly had a lot of people watching their back. I mean, the response was swift and it was large, and it came from all different angles and levels of departments. Madison, thank you so much. Great job yesterday, and your hustle, and the rest of our team too.
You guys too, yeah.
You know, it's one of those things where you said it really well there at some point in your answer. It's not easy for people to talk and share with us on their worst moments, and so we're certainly appreciative that they would take the time to trust us, but also to just share their thoughts and their emotions so that it's not just us, but our entire community that can get a better gauge for what's going on. And of course, in that scenario, it's a matter of public safety too. But great job yesterday. Thank you so much. Madison Schlegel, your report is going to start airing today on 13 News Now. At what time?
4.
At 4 o'clock. You can catch her there on our linear platform. Stick with us here on Live Impact News. We're going to continue our coverage here of the shooting on Old Dominion University's campus. And when we come back, we're going to hear from two experts, one a correspondent and the other former FBI special agent in charge, on what we can expect moving forward here in the investigation. Okay, we just got some breaking news in the situation we've been monitoring at UVA. That bomb threat has been cleared. That alert just came in from UVA police. No device was found at the Shannon and Clemens libraries, which were the locations of focus in which this apparent bomb threat had been called in. People can resume their normal activity there. They will not provide any further updates. So that's a great thing there. We know that they had evacuated the students from both of those facilities, and now they are saying that they can go back to their regular activities. Meanwhile, George Mason, we have not received the all clear just yet there. George Mason University also reporting a possible bomb threat there at the Fenwick Library on campus, on its Fairfax campus. That the library was closed until further notice to allow police to investigate the situation there. As of now, we have not received an all clear from that, but we do know that the investigation is currently being conducted there, although they had not confirmed that the threat was real, but of course they are exercising an abundance of caution. Again, this has kind of been the theme here that we were talking about at some point in the stream earlier about what is taking place in the last 48 hours here on our local college campuses. The big situation that we've been following has been the deadly shooting on Old Dominion University's campus. The FBI now investigating that as a possible terrorist attack. That's because the person responsible, the gunman, 36-year-old Mohammed Jallo, has already been convicted and imprisoned for being connected to ISIS. He pled guilty back in 2016 after again admitting that he attempted to work with ISIS and to share materials with ISIS. Unknowingly, he was communicating with an FBI informant. And even within that information, we now know through reporting from that first situation several years ago that Jallo at some point was even telling the informant of when would be the best times to plan an attack, saying that Ramadan would be an ideal time. We happen to be in Ramadan right now. Also saying that he supported and liked the attack on Fort Hood. So there is a background with this individual who, again, is the person that the FBI identified as being the shooter that killed one and injured two others in that ROTC classroom at Charter Hall there on Old Dominion University's campus. He is now dead, but the investigation into his life is very much so ongoing right now and underway. So what does that mean? There are a lot of questions that we don't have the answers to, right? What caused him to do this? What was he thinking? Who did he meet? Who did he see? How did a person who spent 8 years or 7 to 8 years in prison for this crime, how was he able to get his hands on a gun and a weapon? And what can we learn about the weapon that he used? All of that, of course, is going to be a part of the investigation. But where does the FBI start? Well, we spoke with the former FBI Norfolk Field Office Special Agent in Charge, Brian Dugan, earlier this morning, and he shared some context to what we could possibly expect to see investigators do in the coming days and moving forward in this particular probe. Thank you for staying with us here for Live Impact News. We are continuing our coverage on the aftermath of the deadly shooting on Old Dominion University's campus. Now it is an investigation into the motives behind the gunman who, as again we've reported, is dead, was subdued and killed by the ROTC students inside the classroom in which that gunman opened fire. A lot of questions still remain in this case, but it's also interesting given this particular individual's criminal history and ties to terrorism, ties to ISIS. Joining us right now, we have Brian Dugan, who's the former special agent in charge of the Norfolk Field Office. Thank you so much for taking time and speaking with us, particularly given the circumstances that we're all seeing unfold at this point. Brian, I first want to ask you this. We heard from federal officials and then police that in a lot of ways yesterday the investigation later in today was really just underway. There's a lot of questions still to get answered. How does an investigation like this begin? Where would you start in putting the pieces together and what led up to this?
Well, I mean, the honest part about the beginnings is we really want to make sure, and we've had this remit since 2001 is to make sure there's not another attack. So that's going to be the first step is, are there others out there, others planning, others that are weaponized? They're going to follow his steps. So that's going to be number one. Number two is to find out if there's anybody else out there facilitating or had facilitated this to make sure that there's nothing else out there that we're not aware of. So that's going to be the big ones up front. That's how it begins, is we really have to dive into everything we know about Muhammad and what we know about his connections, his communications, and make sure that there's not going to be another one right around the corner.
And we do know a bit about him at this point because he does have a prior documented criminal history, particularly, with ties to terrorism there. Looking at his history, his criminal record, that he had pled guilty in 2016 to attempting to work with ISIS there. How does that play in a role in how this probe is approached? Does it change how the typical approach would be?
Well, it's a big difference between someone that's supporting terrorism versus actually weaponizing themselves. That's a big jump. So that's going to be probably another question everybody's going to ask in the investigation is, how does he go from supporting but then taking the big step to put himself out there? Something kind of clicked him off to do this. Something motivated him to do this beyond what he did before. And so that's a big concern because usually the folks that are supporting want to kind of stay behind the scenes and maybe not want to get out there yet. They're not that brave yet, committed yet. And now we've got him doing this. So something's there to have to be investigated.
And, I think that leads into my next question for you. Again, Brian Dugan here joining us, former special agent in charge of the Norfolk Field Office here in Virginia and Hampton Roads. Timing of all of this. There obviously are going to be questions, as you just said, what might have triggered all of this. We have the war with Iran that's going on right now. We also, with timing into the investigation and how it's handled, I want to ask you, does it impact the investigation that students are likely not going to be on campus for the next week and a half? And then the other thing with timing with this, there are previous reports that he had suggested when he had pled guilty back in 2016, that he had suggested Ramadan as an ideal time for an attack. Obviously, we're in that right now. All of those timing things, I'm kind of hearing from you, that would play a part in where the investigation, where you would maybe look, correct?
There's a lot of different angles. I mean, coincidence versus correlation. Is there a conspiracy? All these things need to be kind of sifted through to figure out if there is any kind of connection to what he did, why he did it, with other incidents that have happened in the last week or so versus Iran. And again, also a lot of times the radicalized folks, the lone wolves here in the United States, he had offered support for ISIS before, which is not friendly to Iran. But then he's got an angst against the Jewish population. So it kind of runs the game.
Right. He served around 7 or 8 years of his 11-year prison sentence. What does it look like from your standpoint, within the FBI and maybe keeping track or monitoring? Is that something you think in this particular situation would have likely been done, or how does that fall into all of this as well? Do we typically keep track of these individuals once they get out after they pled guilty to something like he did?
Well, we certainly do, but I mean, there are a lot of subjects that get released out of jail on probation and on parole, and there's so many that nobody in law enforcement can watch all these guys. So certainly, he's a subject of interest based off his previous case, and that's something that law enforcement is going to keep an eye on. But they're not going to be 24-hour monitoring of him, and they're certainly not going to be up on all of his communications throughout his life after being in custody. So there's a limit to how far law enforcement can do to kind of stay on top of someone like this. but it certainly doesn't bode well that he was able to radicalize again and then take the further step of being kinetic and taking action in his own hands.
And is that something that, in your experience, again, thank you for taking time and talking with us today. Is that something in your experience that we see happen where you have someone who spent, significant time in prison for a connection to, a terrorist or et cetera, and on the back end after they get out that they re-radicalize? Is that something in your experience that surprises you? Is it something that you're not surprised by? Do we see that often in your space?
Well, let's just say in general, recidivism is usually low amongst all people that come out of the prison system, but it's not perfect. It's not 100%. And honestly, I don't know of any that I can think of that were counterterrorism subjects that did time in the United States prison system and were released and then went back to terrorism. But I can't say it can't happen. And just like our recidivism rate is low, but not 100%, we're going to have people like this that still maintain the mentality and the motivation.
That's really good context. I appreciate you giving that. Now I want to ask about your connection to this community and to Norfolk. I mean, for years, you led the charge here. You would have been in the forefront, speaking most likely with press, with the community, coordinating efforts there with this. For you to see that this has happened and knowing your connection here to this Norfolk community, what were your kind of initial thoughts? And can you put us into maybe how some of the federal agents, how they are possibly feeling and doing right now, having to deal with something like this here in Norfolk?
Well, I mean, obviously, during my time, we responded to a couple active shooter incidents, and it saddens me we have to go through this again. Certainly at the campus of ODU, which is a great school. It was a great partner with us. And a lot of the collaboration that we did for my time there, I know continues, where we're preparing for these types of things, working out on how we're going to respond to these types of things. And I know the team is working throughout the night, throughout the day, helping out ODU, helping out the police department there and Norfolk Police Department, and working with all the other law enforcement agencies to try to get to answers that we talked about earlier that we need to find out fast.
And I think that is a great segue to this. How fast, Brian, in this scenario where the gunman is already dead, how does time play a factor into this and when you get this information?
Well, certainly when it's a terrorism incident and the subject's dead, that does not mean the case is done. We need to find out others that are involved, others that may be planning. Like I mentioned before, really what we need to do is make sure this doesn't happen again. And so I guarantee headquarters, counterterrorism division, all the other folks at DHS are now digging through everything and sifting through everything to find out who else is out there, what else is out there, and let's make sure that we stamp out any others that may be thinking that let's do this again, or a copycat or anything like that.
And then I will just ask you if there's anything else that I have not asked that you would really like for our viewers to maybe hear, you think could really provide some context for anybody who is trying to make sense of all of this from the investigation standpoint.
Well, the first thing is that my heart goes out to everybody that's dealing with this and to my old team that I know is going to be jumping on this. But like SAC Evans said, if there's anybody who knows anything about what was going on with this gentleman or anybody that's associated with him, please reach out to the FBI, reach out to law enforcement. It's crucial that as a community, we get together, one, to get over the trauma, but two, to make sure there's nothing else out there we're missing.
Okay, so there you have it there from him. We were very appreciative to have his feedback there moving, where we're thinking ahead in terms of this investigation. At this time, we're going to take a quick break here. We appreciate you for joining us here for Live Impact News. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Thank you for watching us here for Live Impact News on 13 News Now Plus. We're continuing to follow the deadly shooting on the campus of Old Dominion University. We know that one person has died, a victim there. Another, their condition has now been changed from critical to fair, according to Centera Norfolk General Hospital. But of course, a lot of questions remain in this situation as now investigators are trying to figure out not only what led up to it, what the motive was of the gunman, but how it fits within the possible threat of a terrorist attack. We have with us right now ABC News Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas joining us in the stream. thank you so much for your time today. I know that you're covering this case as well. Unfortunately, it's not your first time having to cover a case like this. Of the details that we have so far, what has stood out to you?
Well, again, it's another reminder that we're in this period of time where these kinds of mass shootings scenarios, active shooter scenarios, are playing out on a routine basis. And I think the thing that always strikes me in these cases is the loss of life. That professor who seemed like a person who was doing the right thing in the right way, gone far too soon. And as we were saying a few moments ago, I'm sure he woke up yesterday morning not thinking his life was going to end. And sadly, this is a scenario we see playing out over and over and over again. I've had sources agree with my assessment that this is perhaps the most dangerous threat environment since 9/11, that we are seeing routinely mass attacks in public places, sometimes for political reasons, sometimes for geopolitical reasons. And if you put these things together, it's really quite disturbing. If you look at the assassination attempt against President Trump, then candidate Trump, then another assassination attempt against him within weeks. Then we had a terror attack to start last year out in New Orleans. Those state officials in Michigan who were shot, killed, and injured. We had diplomats, Israeli staff members in Washington assassinated, only feet from the FBI Washington field office. Charlie Kirk's assassination. And I'm leaving out a number of others. So this period of time that we're in is something different, and it's real.
You listed out all of these instances that we've seen play out over the last several years, and I think about this particular case where we have an individual who was in our judicial criminal system, had already been locked up because of a connection to ISIS, according to federal authorities. In your reporting, what have been some of the steps that maybe you have been made aware of that they're doing to track any of these threats before someone is able to act something out? Particularly, I mean, again, in this case, we knew of this person, maybe not what they were going to do, but we knew of them.
Well, this case is complicated in this sense. He was convicted, served his time, 8 years of an 11-year sentence. In America, typically when that's over, you've done your penance. We understand that he was under some level of supervision post-prison term, that he was to regularly check in with a probation officer, that the authorities could monitor his internet activity. But there's a question of, well, once someone is an avowed ISIS supporter, should you continue to do some level of surveillance on that person? That's an interesting question. Was there a period of time where he's been out of jail, out of prison, where he's been living was there a period of time when he's been out of jail, living a normal life without any suggestion of radicalization? We don't know the answer to those questions. But we do know this: as a convicted felon, he should not have been able to have a firearm. Where did the firearm come from? So this raises a lot of interesting questions about a steady stream of people we had who were affiliated, swore allegiance to ISIS, who went to jail. What happens to those people when they're released?
And you mentioned the fact that he was able to get his hands on a weapon, and that's going to be a lot of the questions into this process now moving forward. And we heard from the Norfolk Commonwealth attorney at the end of yesterday's first press conference, where he spoke before we knew who this individual was publicly, about gun control and his issues with that, right? However this person was able to get their hands on it. What other questions for you moving forward? You're looking at this from your scope and your experience that you are closely monitoring, that you say, you know what, we really need to see how this is going to play out. What are the other questions that now you're looking into?
Well, right now, the dynamic of the ongoing conflict with Iran. And a few weeks ago, I think it was on Good Morning America, I talked about a threat environment where law enforcement was focused on a number of things. Number one, were there Iranian sympathizers here in the country? Were there people that may have had direct ties to the Iranian government? The federal government wants to know. Are there lone wolf type people who are just unstable? And when they see tensions rise domestically and internationally, it just makes unstable people sometimes want to do things. Then there was the scenario which sources talked about, the potential of cyber threats. And then the other scenario that someone I distinctly remember, and it may have been in one of the bulletins, that supporters and or sympathizers of Al-Qaeda and ISIS might see this period of tension as an opportunity zone to do things. And then lo and behold, within hours of the war starting, we had the suspect in Austin, Texas, who was wearing a T-shirt with the Iranian flag on it, kill people. Then now we have the incident in Michigan yesterday, on the same day that we have this tragedy here in Norfolk at ODU. So it's a moment where law enforcement, and I'm talking to them, and I can feel the tension in their voices.
Again, Chief Justice Correspondent for ABC News, Pierre Thomas, taking some time today to talk to us about obviously something that is on all of our hearts and mind here in Hampton Roads with this now deadly shooting at ODU. Thank you so much for taking time with us today. Certainly good to hear from him, but we do have breaking news right now into our newsroom about that gunman, Mohammed Baylor Jallo. We just learned from the officials at ODU that he was a currently enrolled student at the university. He was a geography student who was originally admitted in the fall of 2007 as a freshman and then was enrolled on and off through spring of 2013. He then re-enrolled in the summer of 2025. So, yes, he was a student there at the university. We are going to take another quick break here on Live Impact News. We will be back with more on the other side of this break. Thanks for your patience here. A little bit of a tech difficulty on the back end on our end here for Live Impact News, but we are back and we are now going to switch gears. Looking into the Commonwealth of Virginia, our lawmakers have been in session, we know, for the last few months. A big thing that they were tasked to do here is to reach an agreement on a budget. Now, the Democrats, they run the governor's seat, the House, and the Senate. But as of right now, they have not been able to reach a deal, even though the end of this session, regular session, is tomorrow. What is the big thing that is holding this up? It's data centers. On one end, you have the Senate and its leadership with Louise Lucas right out of here in Hampton Roads saying that she will not support tax breaks for these data centers. On the other hand, in the House and others, they say, hey, those tax breaks were able to help get all of this investment and those companies into the Commonwealth. Maybe we should consider what that would mean if we take them away. I want you to listen right now to Delegate Luke Torian. He spoke about this just yesterday during their open session in the House about where they stand when it comes to the budget and why he has concerns on what the Senate is currently proposing.
I'm sorry to report that there will be no such agreement at this time. Unfortunately, as many of you have seen on social media, the other body has taken the position that a budget cannot be finalized, at least in their view, without eliminating the data center sales tax incentive. This is not a position the House can or should agree to. The House produced a strong and responsible budget. It expands support for core government services and increases investment in housing, public and higher education, and health and human services. This budget makes targeted investments to ease pressures facing our citizens by strengthening access to affordable health care, supporting housing stability, expanding child care availability, and keeping higher education within the reach for the next generation. Let me be clear. The data center industry supports 74,000 jobs in Virginia. It generates $5.5 billion in labor, income, and contributions. $9.1 billion to Virginia's GDP every year. In addition, the data center generates more than $2 billion in local tax revenue annually. But eliminating the sales tax exemption would cost Virginia far more than lost tax revenue. Virginia's reputation as a reliable place to do business will be called into question. Companies across industries, not just the data center sector, may begin to wonder whether Virginia is a partner they can depend on. At a time when the Commonwealth is already navigating the economic fallouts of federal retrenchment, we must ask ourselves, do we really want to pull the plug on economic growth? I repeat, we cannot and we will not.
That was House Delegate Luke Torian that you heard from there. In response to those comments, I want you to read what Senator Louise Lucas posted on X, sharing those comments in an embed. This is what she had to say as Sarah pulls it up here. She says, quote, first poking at her fellow colleagues in the House, saying next year I'm going to help our House of Delegate members get on social media so they can keep up. As you know, I've been saying for weeks now that we will not pass a budget that puts data centers, tax breaks ahead of hardworking Virginia families. And she says, I am not backing down now. So that is at the heart of this debate between the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats. Tomorrow is the end of this regular session, and you heard it there from Torian. They have not been able to reach an agreement at this time. I want to bring in our political expert, Dr. Eric Claville here, and we've had a lot of conversations just about a lot of issues leading up to, even when it came to the elections, and for Democrats, their excitement that they were able to get, control of all three branches of government here. And here we have the first term for them with control. Right now, they're having a hard time reaching an agreement on a budget. Where are you with all of this in terms of what you're seeing and how this could potentially play out?
Well, Eugene, the entire Commonwealth is waiting on this particular issue. I mean, really, there are a lot of bills that are passed and argued on the floor, but what it really boils down to is the budget. Right now, Virginia has a budget of $74 billion, and these tax breaks represent, or tax exemptions, they represent 2%, about $1.9 billion to the data centers. This is an issue that's not going to go away, especially given the cuts of the federal government through DOGE and also the elimination of funding through the Affordable Care Act for those that had extended health care through Medicaid, also known through or as Obamacare. So there's a lot of holes that we have to fill, not just the Commonwealth of Virginia, but every state in the union. With that being said, a large amount or a big pool of that money are these tax breaks or tax exemptions. Now, this becomes problematic for a couple of reasons, and of course, Chair of Appropriations, the Delegate Lutorian, the chairman mentioned some of those in the clip that you just played. In part, I want our listeners to understand how data centers actually play in the Commonwealth. Right now, Virginia is what we call the data center capital of really the world. We have over 575 operating data centers in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I bet many people didn't know that. I didn't know that until I researched it. But the actual brain or the intelligence of the United States is located here in the Commonwealth, mainly in Northern Virginia, but we have a lot of these data centers that are sprawling and more that want to come here to the Commonwealth. When we take a look at the information that we have flowing through wires and also through the air across the country and the world, Amazon, Microsoft, all these Google and all these major companies, they're located here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. There's a reason for that, because Virginia is the place to do business. Of course, over the last couple of gubernatorial cycles, Virginia has been the best place to do business, number one, especially under the last administration. And now Virginia wants to continue to be that place. One way to continue that, according to the chairman, is for us to basically honor those agreements that we had or currently have in place. Currently, those tax exemptions, they expire in 2035. However, early on in this General Assembly, they were extended to 2050, given that the data centers meet some benchmarks. Now, I want to talk about a couple of those, and then I want to look at the Senate side and also look at what the governor is proposing as a compromise. Right now, data centers have those exemptions if they invest $150 million, create at least 50 jobs in the retail side and such. That's a lot of tax dollars that are going to localities, right? So when you look at where those data centers are located and you look at the supporting resources that we have there, the schools and the like, you see really the difference. Now, that's extended or that's actually included in the extension, but also upping those jobs to create more. In addition to that, the fuel use and the noise consumption or complaints or the noise pollution. So with that, data centers, we know they take a lot of resources, a lot of power. So in essence, the citizens in those areas, they actually share the burden of that. One of the compromises for this is for the governor. She said, well, if this is the case for data centers to basically pay their fair share, then maybe a consumption tax on the energy that they use is the way to go. Another part of this extension for the 2050 is for them to wean themselves off of their polluting energy source into clean energy source. And one area that's becoming very popular now is natural gas. So natural gas powered centers that's something that's catching on. Now, of course, this is very good for natural gas companies, but at the same time, is moving away from the grid, which helps the costs and the prices for local citizens, which again helps to bring down that cost, but also helps to keep the tax exemption in place. Now, on the Senate side, the Senate Pro Tem, Senator Lucas, is adamant that by ending these exemptions and tax breaks, making the data centers pay their fair share, then what will happen is that it's projected that though it will raise about $1 billion over the next 2 years, which can go to about $93.8 million to localities, but also go to fund things like transportation as well. So what the President Pro Tem is proposing is allowing corporations to pay their fair share in order to fund initiatives for everyday citizens or all Virginians. What the House is proposing is to continue to keep those promises in place, but raising the bar on their investment in local communities. And what the governor is proposing is not to do away with the exemption, but to add the consumption tax, which is basically paying their fair share for energy. Now, what does this mean for us in Virginia and as it relates to this General Assembly? Statutorily, they have to pass a budget or meet for a compromise on the budget 2 days or 48 hours before the end of session. Session ends tomorrow, which is sine die, March 14th, so they're not going to meet that threshold. We knew that yesterday coming out. Right now, a special session can be had or held in that time period. A compromise with conferees can also be held, which is a group of both Republicans and Democrats on both sides of the House and the Senate, coming together to really discuss the compromise on the budget to submit to the governor. Now, of course, reconvene session is on the 21st. That can also be held before that time, or they can discuss it at that time period. But ultimately, a new budget has to be adopted and signed by July 1st. If not, then we truly will have a major impasse where there is not a budget for the Commonwealth moving forward for the next 2 years.
And you know what? As you were talking, we just got a release from the joint appropriation chairs in both the House and the Senate. They have not reached an agreement, but this coming in saying today, Senate Finance and Appropriations chairs, Luis Lucas and Luke Torian, releasing a statement saying that they are pleased to report that budget negotiations are moving forward and they are making meaningful progress toward a final agreement that reflects the priorities for Virginians across the Commonwealth. They have a lot that goes into that. I'm going to try to pick through a little bit of this at the moment. Saying Virginia is home to one of the most important technology corridors. We just heard you say that in the world, supporting thousands of good paying jobs, driving economic growth in Virginia, saying that we are committed to getting our approach to data center taxation right. As we evaluate the exemptions and incentives currently in place, our focus is on preserving that competitive advantage and ensuring the policies we adopt remain transparent, fair for Virginians, and consistent with Virginia's reputation as the best state for business. I'm going to skip ahead to the end where it says, we expect to resolve the remaining outstanding issues soon and look forward to presenting a final budget that Virginia families, businesses, and communities can be proud of. That just came in within the last 3 or 4 minutes from the joint Senate Finance and House Appropriations chairs, Luis Lucas and Luke Torian. We just showed you their responses just yesterday to one another. So I think that speaks to what you're talking about, right? They know that they still have time before that July 1st ultimate deadline to work this all out. But I do want to ask you, just from the optics standpoint of this at the moment, because we have Democrats who are in control, right? They're in control of the chambers. We're not talking about Republicans going against, Democrats or vice versa in this moment. We're talking about Democrats who can't quite see eye to eye just yet on this budget. How does that reflect on the party in your estimation?
Well, politics is about compromise. You may be of the same party, you may be of the same, even share similar experiences, but you're not going to agree on everything. But one thing we have seen in this General Assembly, and I will say this is the first time where we've had Democratic control in the General Assembly where there has not been a budget reach within the time period of the General Assembly. So the first time since since Don Scott's leadership in the House and President Pro Tem at the same time. But I do want to also point to the fact that this General Assembly, led by the Democrats, have come to many decisions where they saw eye to eye. And this is just one of those small areas. So you're going to have this in politics. The key is, can you come to the table, compromise and get it done, and make sure all voices are heard? I want to put out something very important at that point, because we see the example in Washington where Republicans control each side of the House and also the White House. But there are some areas where a lot of areas where they can't see eye to eye, especially where you have the White House controlling a lot of the policy that the Congress should. So there was one instance where there was on the floor where a Republican actually stood up and thanked Senator Pro Tem, the Democrat, Senator Lucas, for the budget that they passed in the Senate with no new taxes. And he said, thank you for hearing our voice and make sure our voice was heard. And that was impromptu. I mean, that was nothing planned, but that just shows you that, this particular General Assembly they're not dictating or they're not legislating without hearing all voices. They're making sure that all voices are heard. As a matter of fact, Republican Studever, I'll check that in just a moment, but he actually agrees on the Senate side with the Democrats that they should provide this, eliminate this tax exemption, and really don't see eye to eye with the House side. So, again, when we talk about the control of both houses, there are a lot of voices that are operating within this particular government, as always there are. We know that it's only the top voices that we hear, but there are a lot of voices, a lot of moving pieces, but we do know that they're willing to, based upon the statement that you just read, to work this out. And I mentioned the governor being involved as well, providing that compromise over consumption tax over energy consumption.
And speaking of the governor, this is, maybe could be considered one of her first real tests when it comes to being able to governing, within not just your colleagues, but particularly, as you said, your own party. This is, people are going to watch to see how she handles this in this moment. What are some of the maybe opportunities for her and, out of this, or what could potentially be, some of the things she wants to kind of watch out for as she navigates these waters?
Right. And I just want to fact check myself. That was Senator Glenn Studevert, that represents the district south of Richmond, that did make that statement, where he agrees with the Senate side and doesn't agree with the House side. As it relates to your question about the governor, I like that you said an opportunity, right? In politics is really the art of compromise anyway, right? That's the pure definition of it. With this, every situation is an opportunity to show leadership, an opportunity to create partnerships across lines and also within your own party. So I believe the governor's, where she is leading now, I believe is the right way for her, given what she ran on. Our governor is a centrist. So therefore, not siding with one side or the other, but offering a compromise in the middle where both sides technically could win, or they could win a lot of what they want. You get a consumer tax placed on data centers, which gives revenue, provides revenue. On the other side, you keep those contracts in place, which keeps the word of the Commonwealth good as relates to business, and it also keeps the status of the Commonwealth as relates to being the intelligence hub and center of intelligence and information data of the world. So, this governor, based upon how she campaigned, how she chose her cabinet, and everything that she's doing, she is a true centrist to the word and to the core. And I think we're seeing this in action.
I think, of many people who are watching to see how she handles this situation, in part because, hey, listen, we know that there are some strong personalities involved, and maybe no personality in all of Virginia politics is stronger than Senator Louise Lucas. And I just want to ask, I know that they put out the statement that they are, working together and they're making progress, but this is not somebody who traditionally backs down from anything when she puts her foot down. Do you see her compromising in this situation, or Do you think this is another one of those where ultimately she'll find a way to have her way, just like we saw with the 10-1 redistricting situation just a little while ago? How do you see her kind of positioning at the end of all of this?
Well, to your point, there are a lot of alpha personalities in the General Assembly. So no one really wants to back down because they're fighting. Literally fighting for what they believe and fighting for their constituents. So it's kind of hard to say I'm backing down. However, I think the word backing down and compromise being replaced with a win-win opportunity for all sides, I think is the proper way to go. Because at the end of the day, you're passing a budget that is a win not only for your constituents, but also a win for the other constituents of the Commonwealth as well. So I believe, again, finding a way to provide revenue from these very, very profitable data centers that also give a lot of value to the localities and, again, provides an identity of an industry for the Commonwealth and keeps it here because there are other states that are waiting to get what we have, right? And when you talk about win-win, one way you can look at this is you have current data centers under this new contract. Well, new data centers that come into the Commonwealth may fall under another provision, which could also provide tax exemptions, but raise the bar or decrease the tax exemptions to give more revenue to the localities. So right there, you have an opportunity to win for your side now and also in the future. So again, that's how politics works, getting the best minds in the room, everyone taking a deep breath and understanding what's at stake and ensuring that you're not backing down, but you're being open to understanding each side for a win-win, not just for you and your constituents, but also for the Commonwealth as a whole.
Well, we will certainly see what happens here. A lot of people are watching both from the standpoint of the budget, what happens with the data centers, but also politically as well, as we're monitoring to see how Democrats handle and operate now again that they do own all three chambers. And in the backdrop of all of this, of course, is the redistricting amendment that now people are voting for at the moment with that April 21st referendum and what that means moving forward for the congressional seats here within the Commonwealth. There's just a lot of rich stuff happening right now that really will impact the Commonwealth for years to come. So a lot of eyes are on it as usual. What do you say? All eyes are on Virginia?
Because as Virginia goes, so goes.
I knew it was one of those. I knew it was one of those.
And also reconvene April 22nd, referendum voting day, April 21st. So like you said, back-to-back. General Assembly members, their agents that come back home to their districts on tomorrow. But campaigning starts the next day for this referendum. So a lot of politics, a lot of front-facing, a lot more conversation. And now we add the budget to it. So
never ends. They get ready. Get ready. All right. We got Dr. Eric LaVille here with us. Thank you so much. Our political expert and Norfolk State University professor as well. Always great when he comes on and can give all of this knowledge when it comes to what's going on in our politics here. We're going to take a break. It is 2:45 right now. You're watching Live Impact News. Stick with us. Okay, thank you for sticking with us here. Earlier today, I told you we were going to give you some updates into some situations that we've been also following when it comes to this war with Iran. As you know, the U.S. and Israel in this war with Iran that has now almost gone into 2 weeks. And earlier today, we got breaking news that 6 U.S. service members died after a U.S. aircraft plane, crashed in the western portion of Iraq. It was not a situation where it was shot down, but those crew members on board, all 6 of them, did die, bringing our total at this point to at least 13 U.S. service members who have died since this war began in the Middle East. Earlier today, we heard from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the Joint Chief of Staff's Chairman, General Dan Kane, in which they gave an update into what is going on right now with that war. Hegseth made some comments saying that he believes that the new Ayatollah there, who replaced his now late father as the supreme leader, is wounded or injured there in the area of Iran. He did not give reason as to exactly what evidence they have from that, but we do know that overnight in the last several or so hours that there was a message that was put out, but it was not his face, the Ayatollah's face. It was a woman who was front-facing on that particular report. So we did, again, capture the moments in which there was a Q&A with Hegseth and with General Kane. We're going to go ahead and play that for you so you can see their responses to reporters who were inside of the White House earlier today.
Thank you both for the update. ABC News has updated its story from yesterday, clarifying that the FBI report on Iran possibly striking California was unverified. I just want to ask you, what impact did that original reporting have on the public, and does Iran even have the ability to conduct such a strike? And then just really quickly on another note, what role did Vice President Vance play in counseling the president on this conflict? Can you speak to some of the media reporting suggesting that there is a division there?
That reporting on California obviously had no impact on us. Also, we're used to bad reporting. We're used to ill-informed reporting. And so it doesn't change how we operate, but we engage with it to prove that it's not true, as CENTCOM has done so well. Ultimately, I look at the reports on a daily basis of our interagencies all over it. My partners across government are all over, looking for indications and warnings, keeping the American people safe. There's a lot of things Iran has said it can do for a long time, thankfully, including engaging their proxies and getting them involved in the fight, which they haven't been able to do. So we're watching that very closely. And as far as the vice president, he's an incredible member, leader of this team as well, alongside the president and the Secretary of State. I can't say enough great stuff about this team, how it works together, how it provides options to the president, and the vice president every single day is a key voice in that, an indispensable voice in that, actually. In the middle there, red tie, yes.
Michael Gordon, Wall Street Journal. Iran is thought to have 440 kilograms of highly enriched uranium in at least 2 locations and several thousand kilograms of lower purity material. Can you conclude this mission successfully without physically taking control of that material, or are you counting on diplomatic negotiations to provide some measure of control leading to its removal? You've mentioned missiles, you've mentioned drones, military industry. You haven't stipulated that taking care of that material is a mission priority.
We've said from the beginning, deny Iran nuclear weapons as a core mission. We retain options across the spectrum to ensure that they never do. And President Trump has said that. And that's why this mission actually couldn't have been possible without Midnight Hammer, without what those B-2s did going across and obliterating those facilities. That set the condition for the opportunity to do what we're doing now. So the president's kept his eye focused on nuclear capabilities. And I will say we have a range of options, up to and including Iran deciding that they will give those up, which of course we would welcome. They weren't willing to do in negotiations. I would never tell this group or the world what we're willing to do or how far we're willing to go, but we have options for sure. Right next to him.
Me?
No, right there.
Right here, sir? Right here?
I'll
take it for
Quarter
sure.
zip right there, yep. No, you, yep.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can you please provide some guidance? It's been 13 days in. Can you please provide some guidance, both of you, about the strike on the girls' school? There's been reporting that indicates that preliminary inquiry, even though it's ongoing, has determined that the airstrike was carried out by the United States. Given that there is another competing narrative that this was done intentionally, can you provide us with some guidance about whether this was the case? Secondly, we are also getting, we had heard yesterday from Energy Secretary Wright that said that the U.S. Navy would not be ready until the end of the month to provide escorts through the Strait of Hormuz. Is that an accurate assessment? And if so, can you tell us why? Thank you.
Well, with an issue on your first topic, an issue of such seriousness, we're not going to let reporting lead us or force our hand into indicating what happened in a particular situation, because the truth matters. So I can report that CENTCOM has designated an investigating officer to complete a command investigation. The command investigation will take as long as necessary to address all the matters surrounding this incident. And the investigating officer is from outside CENTCOM and is a general officer. But I will note to this group and to the world, there's only one entity in this conflict between us and Iran that never targets civilians. Literally never targets civilians. I look at the process that's used on dynamic strikes or on boat strikes and others. We have a very high fidelity process in that case. So we don't target, Iran does. We will investigate, we'll get to the truth, and we'll share it when we have it. Absolutely. And what was the second
question?
question?
About the Strait of Hormuz, about the Navy. Secretary Wright.
It's a tactically complex environment, and before I think we want to take anything through there at scale, we want to make sure that we do the work pursuant to our current military objectives to do that safely and smartly. So we're continuing to develop.
And we do a lot of work.
Yeah.
And like I said, this is it is dynamic, but this is, I think, almost by 20% the largest day of strikes. And as I said, our intelligence just gets better and better. That feedback loop feeds itself. And as we refine those targets, it exponentially increases what we can hit and why, to include strategic things the world's talking about and looking at. And it's our job to have a plan for it, which we do, to address it, and ensure that the president has options. We've done that from the beginning in this department. He'll have options on that topic as well. Right here.
Thank you. That strike, sir.
An investigation is an investigation. That's what it is. It doesn't mean anything other than that. Yes.
Ryan Morgan with the Epic Times. Regarding today's busy day of strikes.
Okay, we have to get out of that right now because we do have breaking news that is now reportable. This coming from ABC, that federal authorities have arrested a Virginia man accused of unlawfully selling a gun to Mohammed Jallow, that former Virginia National Guardsman who killed that ROTC instructor and injured 2 students on Old Dominion University's campus yesterday. This just came into our studio here. Kenya Chapman is the name of the person who has now been charged with false statements and unlawful firearms dealing offenses in the criminal complaint that was filed today for his alleged sale of a Glock 44 .22 caliber gun to Jallow, who was previously convicted, as you remember, according to our reporting, in 2016 in attempting to work with ISIS by providing material support to ISIS. That felony at the federal level would and should have barred him from being able to legally purchase or possess a gun. So this is new information that we are just getting into our newsroom, that federal authorities have arrested a Virginia man who is accused of illegally selling a firearm to the gunman behind that deadly shooting on Old Dominion University's campus just yesterday. This is breaking news, and of course, we're going to have so much more from that if you continue to follow us here on 13 News Now on all of our platforms, 13 News Now Plus, which is our streaming app, which you can download right now for Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, particularly for those of you who are following us live right now on YouTube. You can also follow us on air on 13 News Now, as we do have 13 We have several shows that are coming up here within the next several hours starting at 4 o'clock, and a team of reporters who are working the story from all angles this afternoon and for, of course, the next several days, weeks, and months to come as we continue to look into this. For now, though, we appreciate you joining us here for Live Impact News today. A lot that we've had to cover. Again, that breaking news, we're going to end it with that. Sarah, I think that's a good place to end it for today. On behalf of myself, Eugene Daniel, and our producer, Sarah Calloway here, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back on Monday at 10 o'clock.